Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas. My name is Eddie Rivkin. I am joined as always by Chris Chapman of Fox Sports Las Vegas and Lindsey Brown of Lotus Broadcasting. This episode, like all others, is brought to you by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, your home for everything Las Vegas, and by my good friend Dr. John Pierce at Ageless Forever, www.agelessforever.net. All right, boys and girls, this is the final report card episode. The regular season ended last night with a bit of a whimper, a 4-1 loss to the Anaheim Ducks. The Golden Knights finished the year 45 wins, 28 losses, 8 overtime losses, 98 total points. They finished 4th in the Pacific Division, and they are the second wild card heading into the playoffs. So what we're going to do, kids, is we're going to go through the offense, the defense, the goaltending, the power play, the penalty kill, the coaching, overall grade, and then a team MVP. We're going to keep this moving quickly with your answers about 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. We're going to start off by giving our grades, and then we'll have a couple of minutes each to explain why we graded what we graded. So we're going to make this move along fast so the information will flow and fly, and we are off to the races. The first category for this report card, the end of the season report card for the Golden Knights, is the offense. Ladies first, Lindsey Brown, what's the grade for the offense this year?
Well, this is I'm probably going to give them somewhere in the B range. Now, as I go through my argument here, the reasons why, I'm sure it'll sharpen up, because arguably this is a better balanced offense than what they had last year, right? There's multiple 20-goal scorers. You had a career year from Jonathan Marchessault, Jack Eichel just right behind him at 68 points, with Jonathan Marchessault at 69, and I thought that really wasn't a question to me most nights. It was mostly, can they keep the puck out of the net? So I would think I'm going to probably do B plus if I'm a very nice. Okay, well, I'll do B plus because I'll be the nice professor and curve up then.
Okay, Chapman's. What's your analysis of the offense?
Well, I'm not too far off, but I'm going to go the other end of the spectrum, and I'm going to go B minus. They finished 13th out of 32 teams in goals scored with 263. They actually tied with the Boston Bruins, believe it or not, both teams with exactly 263 goals. There were times where the offense disappeared, last night being one of them. I think when you factor in everything as a whole, the power play for most of the year struggled. So I think that has to factor into the offense. I mean, they were maybe a little above average offensively. So I think for me, the fact that this is a team that had a 40-goal scorer, 2 30-goal scorers, that's a bulk of their offense. When you look up and down the roster, there weren't a ton of guys who had career years offensively like we saw last year. A lot of guys were down, a couple of guys were up, but for the most part, I think they were probably right in the middle of the pack, maybe just a smidge above. So I'm going to go with a B minus for the offense.
Well, then, I guess if it's my job to be the arbiter of common sense and goodwill, I'll just say a B.
There you go.
I think that, there was never any continuity the whole year. You had guys literally playing with guys they knew, but guys they hadn't played with all year long. A career year for Jonathan Marchessault, Jack Eichel clearly tracking to be, I would suspect, the Golden Knights' first 50-goal scorer and certainly first 100-point player. But they were plagued by inconsistency up and down the lineup. While they had 40, 30, 30, and they had a bunch of 10 goals, there were also a bunch of people who regressed. And, that puts them above average in the NHL, but all in all, certainly not a stellar improvement over last year. It got them by, it got them to the playoffs, but they're going to need much more going forward in the playoffs if they're going to make a deep run. So to wrap it up, Lindsey Brown, the nice professor, a B plus, Chris Chapman, the mean professor, a B minus, and Eddie, the voice of reason, just went right down the middle and called it a B.
Love it.
Okay, Chris Chapman, you're up. Grade only, just for the defense, and then we'll come back for an explanation.
Well, I think I was really high at the midseason. My opinion kind of wavered. I think defensively, there were a lot of question marks. So I'll just give you the grade for now, and I'll come back, and I'm going to go with a C.
Okay. Lindsey?
C minus.
Oh, back to being the meat.
Yeah, well, this is where the heaviness is going to be for me, because this is a team that is built on the strength of its defensemen, and from the get-go, I think they've struggled to protect their net front, and from there, there's other consequences for the inconsistency in the lineup that you alluded to, Eddie, with the offense that fell on the defenders' shoulders. And so I thought they were reliant too much on guys like Alex Petrangelo at times, and it just created for a more chaotic environment in front of their own net, in their own zone. And I don't think that they produced offensively enough to make up for some of those deficiencies. So C minus, as much as that doesn't sound nice, I feel like I'm being a little bit gracious with that. But the last few weeks with the trades, with Noah Hannafin and all of that, it definitely would have tracked. I think it probably helped that grade. But I would expect bigger things in the postseason.
I'm going to go with C plus trending.
Mm.
The defense wasn't plagued as much by inconsistency as it was by injuries. I mean, Alex Petrangelo, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but he must have missed 30 games this year, including the current mystery illness that's got him missing 7, back for 2, and then
He played 64 games for the Golden Knights.
Really?
I'm looking at it. Yeah, he's only
Seems
missed
like
18. Yeah,
it seems like he missed a lot more. But okay, the stats don't lie. We know Shea Theodore missed close to 30, and there's been a variety of the other issues with the defense, but they have all the tools. They now, with the assumption that Petrangelo comes back, they have 8 healthy defensemen. The addition of Noah Hannafin is the why I said it was a C, but trending up. He adds a significant layer to their defense, especially in the defensive zone. His first pass to get them out and his ability to skate the puck out makes a significant difference. And the way that he has meshed, gelled, fit together with Nick Hague has, I think, in my opinion anyway, brought out the best Nick Hague that we've seen in his time as a Golden Knight. To me, that's the perfect pairing. So C minus from Lindsey, C from Chris, a C for me. Again, I think the overarching part of this episode is going to be they need to be significantly better in the playoffs. There are going to be no nights off. So, Chap, go ahead.
I think what you have to look at here is, and I have no way of knowing if this is an NHL record or not, but they had 13 different defensemen play games for them this year, including Tobias Bjornfot, who I believe played 2 for them. So, I mean, they ran the gamut of defensemen. They went way down into the depths of their minor league system, pulled up guys like Lucas Cormier. They claimed guys off of waivers and later lost them on waivers. Daniil Marimanov traded to Calgary. Obviously, addition of Noah Hannafin. So you add that all together, and you've got 13 defensemen who suited up for you this year. Braden McNabb, the only one who played all 82 games. Nick Hague played 73 games for them. But I think health certainly factors into it. And I can't imagine there's too many teams that have the depth that the Golden Knights have at that position. But when we talk depth, we're talking maybe 9, maybe 10 guys deep. When you're suiting up 13 guys over the course of a season, that's obviously an injury issue. There were no suspensions, so it's not like they lost guys to suspension, but they just could not stay healthy. And I think that has to factor into it somehow. And I know guys it's not like they choose to get injured, but I think it's a problem when you have so many guys get injured and so many of them over the course of a season. We mentioned that Petrangelo played 64 games. Shea Theodore, a lot less than that. Shea Theodore only played 47 games for the Golden Knights. I mean, this was your number 1, maybe number 2 defenseman coming into the season. He's only playing 47 games. That's an issue. 0 consistency all season. Now they seem to be healthy. We'll see going into the playoffs, but I think this grade will significantly be better during the playoffs than it was for the regular season.
Up next, goaltending. Lindsey Brown, we're going to break the 2-minute rule that we tried to enforce early. So you go ahead and go first and just sort of vent your spleen a little bit. Sorry, Mark Stone, for the spleen reference.
Oh,
But
jeez.
go ahead and since you're the acknowledged expert in this field, go ahead and grade the goaltending and just let her rip.
Well, the goaltending is it's suspect to me at this point right now. And I wonder just how much that unbelievable start they got off to at the beginning of the year really sheltered a lot of the issues for this team and really created that for them as they were much more inconsistent throughout the rest of the year. And a lot of those broken plays, those inconsistencies in front of their net, the rush chances against, that's what the goalies have to deal with. You get to deal with the shit. That's your job. And at times they haven't been up to task. And this was a true test for both of these guys that really hadn't had the opportunity that they had this year to take the reins and be the 1A. And I know it's a tandem style, but it felt like it was more of a search for somebody to get on a heater, and it just happened to be going back and forth all season long. I'm a lot more confident in Logan Thompson's game right now, although I think that that's been more of a recent comings on, and I know that both of them have spent extensive time and inconsistent times on the injury list, and that creates a lot of problems for netminders as well. And so, but ultimately, if you look at the numbers and you say the numbers don't lie, they both have above 90% save percentages. They both have goals against averages that are below 3, which is a very low bar, but we're at 270 and 271. So they're nearly identical when it comes to those two stats, with Logan Thompson having almost 700 more minutes played over Aiden Hill. And so it's hard for me to grade because what's the true expectation for these guys when they haven't shown that they can consistently compete at the highest level? I'm not saying they're not capable because clearly the hardware that they were able to acquire last year with Aiden Hill specifically can show that they can get hot. But any goalie can get hot, and so for me, I'm conflicted about it because obviously I'm biased, but because they were both able to get to 20 wins, I believe, and I believe that's a franchise first, or I should say Aiden Hill fell one short. So Logan Thompson 25 and 19, they were close. Uh C plus, B minus, because I'll put my bias in there, I'll put B minus in there.
Chap, take a shot.
Yeah, I think it's average. There was a point in this season when Aiden Hill looked like he was a Vezina trophy candidate, but injuries, and that seems to be the theme here, derailed any opportunity for that. I think the biggest issue we've seen with Aiden Hill this season, and we saw it a bit last season, was his inability to stay healthy. He misses stretches of games. He spent 3 separate occasions this season on the injury report, missed time 3 times because of that. Look, I think Logan Thompson, maybe by default, is the number one goalie going into the playoffs. I mean, I've seen enough of Aiden Hill the last couple of weeks to say that I don't have confidence in him being the same guy he was last year in the playoffs. Logan Thompson, I think there's been stretches where he has been the best goalie that they have in the organization. And I think he's done it more consistently than Aiden Hill has this year. I mean, let's be real. Lindsey brought up the hot start at the beginning of the season. Thank fuck they have that hot start, because if they didn't, they're on the outside today and it's locker cleanout day and we're talking to players about their off seasons. So, I see you shaking your head, but you check their record since that 12-game start, the 12
Right,
games
but
start season.
Right, but you can't assume that the season would play out the same if they had their Stanley Cup hangover in the beginning of the season as opposed to the other. They could have, if they would have started the season, say 500 through the first 20 games, right? The last 62 games would have, each of those games would have a totally different feel. They had a huge cushion, and when the inevitable hit, and Bruce has said this a whole bunch of times, they won a bunch of games to open the season they probably didn't deserve to win,
Mm-hmm.
right? From system structure, just how they played. They weren't, they had a fantastic record coming out of the gate, but they weren't a fantastic team coming out of the gate. So
Well, I think you can make the case they haven't been a fantastic team all season.
I think
Correct.
I think that's a fantastically correct, 100% spot on point. They have never shown themselves as a team that is a serious threat to defend their Stanley Cup
And the
championship.
crazy thing is, they could be, but to make in the interest of making this quick, I'm going to give my grade a C plus.
C
Oh,
plus.
hater.
Wow. Wow. Then if you're going to give it a C plus, I think it's exactly average. I mean, right down the middle. To me, it's a straight C.
Okay.
They've been plagued by inconsistency. Aiden Hill was invincible until he let in a soft goal, and I can't remember what game it was, but I remember we were sitting up there, and I said, I think that's the first soft goal that Aiden Hill's let in since before the playoffs last year. But now, I mean, last night he had the second goal was awful, right? And he seems to let in one leaky goal every game. And I think that's a serious problem. Yes, statistically, plus 900, under 3, above average for the league. But if you talk about the expectations and what they're capable of, I don't think that they were anywhere near meeting that expectation. And you said nobody took the reins and become the 1A. Most of the time they became the 1A because one of them was injured.
Right.
They got the 1A by default slot. I mean,
Exactly.
there was never a 20 game. I shouldn't say that. I suspect that there was never a 20 game stretch in this season where both of them were healthy, where there could have been a real competition to see who of them, if either of them, could have seized the net. So this is the hardest because Logan Thompson has certainly played better recently. Aiden Hill has, look what I did for you last year, but that was last year. So Lindsey a B minus, Chris a C plus, Eddie a C. I love these prediction things. Who's in game one Monday night in Dallas? Lindsey?
Thompson. That's who I'd go with.
Chap?
LT.
I think it should be LT.
You think
But
they're going to go Hill?
I think it's going to be Aiden Hill. I think that, you know, LT has done enough to be the starter, but he hasn't done enough to say that's the horse we're going to ride down as far as we go in the playoffs.
So
So,
let me ask you this. Has
uh-huh.
Aiden Hill done enough to lose that
No.
starter role?
No.
Okay.
He hasn't done enough to lose it, but he certainly hasn't done enough to survive a bad game.
But Eddie, don't you worry every time he goes down that he's gonna pull up and be kind of like looking at his leg and
100
potentially, be that like there's also the psychological impact that you have to think about this too. And as much as people don't want to admit it because whatever is best for the team, whatever it takes to win, it doesn't matter. There's politicking in this as well because there is such a thing as earning the right to go out there and fail and have that first chance to do it. And that's what Chap and I were talking on the VGK Insider show yesterday of would they stick to a true tandem? And it's not necessarily a question of if they go out, start Aiden Hill in game one and he loses and they put LT in there, nobody's going to question it. But are you going to go and what if he wins? And what do they keep riding him or do they go to LT?
I think it's the how. I think more than the result, it's the how. If they lose the first game 3-2 and Aiden Hill makes 47 saves,
Sure.
he gets another start. If they lose the first game 3-2 and Aiden Hill gives up 3 on 15, they make a change. If they win
if Aiden Hill plays like he did last night, Logan Thompson's in net game 2.
1,000%. There's there's no debate and no reason to take up time on this podcast to talk about that. It has to be performance based from now on. If they win a shaky game, you could see a goalie change, right? If they come out and dominate and win 6-3, but he gives up 3 bad goals, the hot goalie still isn't there, and you could see a goalie change, at least in my opinion. So I don't think it's as much result as it is. I mean, like in baseball, they call it quality starts, right?
Right.
And that quality start, I think, determines who gets the next start. And there isn't even a lock in the building, let alone a lock on that position. They're going to just have to wing it and fly by the seat of their pants on literally game by game, potentially period by period, even though we know Bruce doesn't like to pull out the hook too often. But you got to think the amount of rope that they have will be significantly smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right about the performance based thing, and it's just I'm trying not to project where it's like, well, if you make this decision and it could have the psychological impact going long term. There is no long term. There's only today. Like, there's no guarantee the next round, especially when we're talking about who they're going to be facing, which is a very well balanced Dallas team. And so there's also matchup considerations to make. I know that Dallas likes to use their defensemen to shoot pucks. Aiden Hill's a lot better at managing those saves and rebounds than Logan Thompson is, in my opinion. And so
Okay,
I think that plays into it as well. But I agree, the very close to the edge.
Okay, power play. I'm going to lead off, and I'm going to say that this is B- trending upward, and this is an easy one. Noah Hannafin quarterbacking the power play while Petrangelo's out, and Tomas Hurdle's statistics in the slot. We don't do stats here, but I'll just tell you that on multiple occasions since he's been here, Tomas Hurdle has won a face-off, an offensive zone face-off to start a power play, which has led to puck control, which has directly led to a goal. Some of the goals were disallowed, some of them weren't, but the bottom line is he's a monster in the dot, and their ability to start the power play with the puck I'll say B- rising fast, and I
Mm.
expect in the playoffs that it's going to continue to soar because now they've got a pretty good look at what their units are going to look like. Sorry, that was a terrible dick joke. What their units look like, but he is he's spectacular in the dot, and being spectacular in the dot and starting the power play with the puck is an enormous, enormous advantage. So B- rising very fast. Lindsey?
I'm gonna go with a B because I am also very enthused by what I've seen as of late, and then also the diversification that Tomas Hurdle's inclusion brings outside of that face-off dot, which is absolutely a huge, huge deal. There's a lot of people that say that face-offs don't matter; they do matter. But with him and his net front presence, that's always getting inside has always been a tough ask for the Golden Knights, or at least that's not exactly how they like to create their offense because it's hard in there. It's hard to take cross checks to the back. It's hard to get your skates kicked out in front of you. And I can understand you don't want to do it long term, but I also don't want Mark Stone in front of there any longer. And that's not really where he sets up. But in terms of having the pressure to put your best players out there in those moments where you need a goal, where you need to establish a better set of momentum, and they rely on people like Mark Stone to do that. Now that frees him up to go on a different power play, be below the goal line where I think he's most effective, most deadly, and makes the rest of the unit deadlier. And so I'm very enthused by that and the quick decisions by Noah Hannafin. I hate when people stick handle and to dust the puck off before they send it to the net. And I think that there's been an expedition with everybody since he's arrived because the pace is just being pushed quicker, and I think it's going to translate really well. I'm really excited to see what a fully stocked double unit looks like with everybody back in the lineup, if that is in the cards for them.
Chat, power play.
Guys, this isn't a grade the power play over the last 2 weeks. This is a grade the power play since October. And let's be realistic. Outside of the last 2 weeks, the power play has stunk. There have been times where we've called it the absolute worst looking power play we've ever seen. There's inconsistencies. There's guys who pass the puck around too much, guys who were afraid to pull the trigger. Now, has that changed since Noah Hannafin and Tomas Hertl have joined the lineup? Yes. But I'm grading it from October until last night. And last night, and during that stretch, I'm just going to say not good enough. It's better the last 2 weeks, and I think it will be better, much like the defense going into the playoffs. But it's nothing special. It's not. I mean, yeah, they. I'm going to exclude the last 2 weeks because of how much better it has been. But from game 1 to game 70, it was a deterrent to take a power play.
They're top half of the league, Chapman. That didn't just happen in the last 2 weeks.
Not only are they top half in the league, but the difference in their power play conversion between this year and last year is less than 1%.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that it hasn't been better the last little while.
Right.
But overall, it hasn't been good enough. And you could say, again, let's go back to the underlying theme here.
So you're giving it a flunk? Are you flunking them?
No, it's not that bad.
Your tone suggests otherwise.
Well,
yes,
because I get animated, I get excited, but I'm going to go with the C. I think it's average.
Wait a second.
You can't get that hot and bothered for
you can't get your balls in an uproar like that
God.
and then just give it a C, pal.
I'm
sorry.
giving it a C because
stand in your rage. Stand in your rage.
Listen, my
Own
rage. My rage is it could be generated in other places. I don't think it's as good as you guys made it out to be, but I don't think it's average. And there were times this year where it was below average. But I'm going right in the middle. I'm giving it a C.
All right. Whatever. A guy fucking rants for 2 minutes and then says it's
I said lay off the P-bombs.
Yeah. Okay.
There's not P.
It's just respect. That's all it is. Take it or leave it.
Let's talk about the penalty kill. Hopefully Chapman won't be as animated about that and give it a B. But go ahead, Chap. You can go ahead and lean in on the penalty kill.
I think the penalty kill's been okay. It's better. It's been better than their power play. So I mean, if I gave a C to the power
not
play,
a bell curve on its own.
But it's been better. So I'm going to go with a B- for the power play or penalty kill.
B-. Okay, Lindsey.
I think I was reading in the game notes last night. The Golden Knights don't take a lot of penalties, do they?
Least penalized team in the NHL.
I mean that's fantastic. I think that deserves something in and of itself because especially with how much lineup disruption there was, and you're having people that may or may not be up to speed with everyone. It's easy to take lazy penalties, and so I'm going to go with a B just because I have really not that many complaints. I think it's about a commitment thing and staying in your spots and not chasing people out and blocking shots. And while some goals are going to happen, that's today's league, and they're playing against a lot of teams, at least in the Pacific Division, that have extreme power plays. And so I'll give them a solid B.
I think B is the right answer.
Thank you.
Again, also potentially trending upward. They have a lot more people. Early in the year, we were seeing Keegan Colasar on the PK, and we're like, wait a second, that doesn't. But if you look at it now, you have Wah, you have Hertl who's killed some penalties. In theory, you have Stone. I mean, they're now and we didn't even mention William Karlsson in the first sentence, or I didn't. And I expect their penalty kill is going to be pretty good in the playoffs. So yes, they're going to see some stacked power play units. Dallas is pretty stacked. They're pretty deep. And, if it gets to be the matchup that everybody wants in the conference final, we all know what Edmonton's potential power play is. And Vancouver has a pretty good power play as well. I think they're effective. I don't think they're as effective when it was Riley Smith and William Karlsson, but it
was top of the league. It's tough. It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah. So I mean, if there's 32 teams, I mean, I don't know where statistically they were, but I bet they were close to the top 10, and the top 10 means it's above average, but not stellar. So to me, that's a B. Next up on the scorecard, and this should be an interesting one. Let's talk about the coaching job that Bruce Cassidy did. And I want to throw out some, I don't want to say mitigating factors, but some things for you to consider when you before you give the grade. For the second time in 3 years, the Golden Knights led the league in lost man games. We don't need to really go in depth into, who they were and how many there were, but don't quote me, but I would say the number of man games they lost was probably 470-ish. So, and we also talked briefly that the lineup that they're going to put out Monday in Dallas is a lineup that nobody's ever seen. And I want you to think about that Coach Cassidy has never had, not from game one, any stability in his lineup. So, Lindsey, you're taking a deep, gasping breath. So, why don't you go first?
It's so hard for me to hate on Bruce. Like, honestly, this is probably stronger than my goalie bias. Like, I love Bruce Cassidy. I'm a huge fan of what he does, and I think what he's been able to orchestrate this year is something to be commended. And so I'm gonna give it an A minus because I think that he knows how to push the buttons. He holds people accountable, rubs some people the wrong way, but I think ultimately that's what makes this team better. And they got in. It's about getting in, and where this grade will really be proven in this postseason if these guys can basically start from ground zero, come together and figure it out. Like that's going to be such a huge challenge. And if that's able to be achieved and the commitment to the defensive zone and everything else, because it's not like Bruce isn't telling them what to do. It's just, it's up to the players to commit and find that consistency in their game. And so I thought that he drove them well this year. So I'm going to give him an A minus.
Let me ask you this, chat, before you get in, chap. What could he have done differently to make your A minus an A?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if that's anything that he could do. I think that's more because it's dictated by the results. And I think that what are you going to do? Switch line combinations? That was already happening inherently anyways. And so I think maybe if they would have reined in some of the defensemen a little bit, but then again, they're just trying to get stuff done sometimes where you're trying to find somebody to score like a couple years ago when they missed the playoffs when Pietrangelo had to go take over style. Like sometimes you have to do certain things, but the consequences are sometimes executed upon more than you would like. And so there's not much else, but A's are very hard to come by for me. You have to be almost perfect.
Mr. Chapman, how's
Yeah,
Bruce and the boys do?
I think I agree with Lindsey. I think, look, the Golden Knights this season, I'll exclude the goalies, but they played 3 goalies. They had 34 different players play for them this season, excluding the goalies. So a total of 37 different guys at one point or another put the uniform on, went out there and played for them. Do any of you remember Grigory Denisenko? Mason
No.
Morelli, Sheldon
Morelli,
Rempel.
I remember.
All right. Sheldon Rempel.
Yeah.
Byron Frazee.
Pahal.
Braden Pahal, who's now
Can't
in
forget him.
Calgary. We obviously know Brendan Brisson, Lucas Cormier. So this is a job where, look, there was a series or stretch of games where Bruce was rolling out a fourth line of Byron Frazee, Mason Morelli, and Sheldon Rempel. Nothing personal against either of those guys, but they all delivered in their moments. Mason Morelli played really well when called upon. He may have earned himself an NHL look next year, but they're not NHL players. They're not 82 game a year players. For Bruce Cassidy to put that line out there and play them and them produce, I think it says that the guy did a really good job given the shitty hand that he was dealt. I think, yes, results do matter. And I think in terms of results, the Golden Knights did not achieve what they would have wanted to back in October. But I think the job that Sean Burke did, I think we factor that in, because I'm going coaching overall.
Right.
Dominic Ducharme, um, Joel Ward, who I think is going to be an NHL coach.
Certainly.
One,
in
and
the
John
next round,
Stevens.
probably.
Yeah. And then the other guy, I can't remember his name, the video coach, he seems to be right almost every single time. Is it Dave Rogowski? So look, I think
a special shout out to somebody whose name you probably have never heard before, Sean Farrell. He replaced Misha Donskov as the fellow who is behind the scenes and is responsible for getting the players healthy again. When they're skating on their own, when they begin that long process, the long road back, and they're skating over on the B rink at City National Bank, he's this year's version of Misha Donskov, and he gets those guys back healthy. And I think that's a behind the scenes thing, and it was probably super hockey nerdy of me to even bring it up. But, when we ran down the guys that we see in the suits on the benches, this is a guy that nobody in VGK land sees other than basically Chap and I, because Lindsey bails after the second period and never sees him.
Well, I have early mornings.
Right.
For good reason.
So, okay, so you're going to stay with A-, Chap?
I'm going A-, yeah.
You know what? A's are very hard to come by, but I think it's an A, and I'll tell you why. Because Bruce has said a number of times, you can only coach them to the point that they come over the boards.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they didn't execute is not on him. They were prepared, whatever iteration or lineup that they put out every night, they were prepared to play every game. Did they show up every game? No. They laid a whole bunch of turds in the toilet this year. But that's not coaching. You can't be Phil Jackson, the master manipulator and mind mover and book giver.
Zen master, yeah.
What?
Zen master.
That's right. It. He did everything in his power to get every single thing out of that club, he and the staff. They didn't get the results. But yes, results count, but he isn't attributable to the result, in my opinion. At the end of the day, the players play. And there were times where the players did not play and they were disinterested and they didn't give a flying fuck. And that permeated throughout the season. But that doesn't take away from the coaching job that Bruce Cassidy did, like you said, with an AHL fourth line and AHL D guys and the occasional Yuri Patera sighting. I'm with you, Lindsey. I don't have a bad word to say about the guy. And, for as long as he stays, he's the right guy. And yeah, there's some friction and we're not breaking any new ground to say that, him and Marchie don't always get along. I mean, even he said it. Sometimes it's sandpaper and sometimes it's hugs and kisses.
Marchessault said it as well.
And we heard some pushback from the fans talking about it, and I had to break my rule of addressing stupidity. I'm like, you don't have to like a coach. You have to play for the coach. You have to execute what the coach gives you on the X's and O's, and you have to go out and do your fucking job. And they have a cup. So that means they went out and they did their fucking jobs. And they did it because of what Bruce Cassidy and the rest of the staff did it and the way the systems that they implemented. So for me, I don't see there being, I'll use the standard of the question that I asked Lindsey. What more could he have done to make it from an A- to an A? And honestly, I don't see anything. So in my opinion, it's an A.
Right on.
Anybody want to push back on that?
No, I mean, I think we're all really close.
Okay. We're down to the bonus category. 45 wins, 28 losses, 8 ties, 98 points, fourth in the Pacific. They certainly didn't meet our early season expectations.
Oops.
But I need, Lindsey, an overall grade for the Vegas Golden Knights 2023-24 regular season.
C+. C plus, above average because they made the playoffs like that, and that's the key. As you alluded to, Eddie, there were times where it seemed like this team just really wasn't interested in playing the brand of hockey that got them the hardware last year. And again, it's not a sustainable thing to do to play with that level of intensity. But I thought they were way too lax with how they've approached their system management. We already know how I feel about the defensive zone. I feel like they've gotten back to some of their old habits where they'd have to get rush heavy, which I don't think plays well for their goaltenders or for the system that's set up. But ultimately, sometimes you're just too damn talented to lose that amount of games and to find yourself on the outside. And as I said earlier, you built up yourself quite the cushion to start. So I'll give them a C plus, and I feel like that's generous, but at the same time, there are teams that were awful this year and are going to be awful next year and do not play any sort of semblance of level of hockey that the Golden Knights do. So I'll do C plus.
Mr. Chapman?
Yeah, I think C plus is probably pretty accurate. I think it's really close. Look, we don't know what the full potential of this team is because we haven't seen this team in. They had, and this was previous to the trade deadline. They had one fucking game the entire season where they rolled their A lineup out. And they lost. They lost that game 3-0 to Pittsburgh. But there was a stretch. Their decor was decimated. As I mentioned earlier, 13 different skaters played D for the Golden Knights this year. So I think when you factor in that, and people don't want to hear excuses, right? People might push back on me and say, hey, Chapman, your fucking excuses with all the injuries. They're not excuses, they're reasons. This team was not healthy from game 1 to game 82. Now, we do know that I can't figure out how to get there we go. Nobody has been ruled out for game 1 of the playoffs. Game 1 is Monday night. We'll see who is not ruled out for game 1 on Monday night. The Golden Knights, fully healthy, should be the favorite to win the Stanley Cup, despite the fact that they are the 8th team in the Pacific or in the Western Conference. Look, will they win the Stanley Cup? I have no fucking idea. But the reality is a fully healthy Golden Knights team is much better than what we've seen from game 1 to game 82. For that reason, I'm going to give it a C plus, and I think that has the potential we've talked about for a variety of categories. That has the potential to move way up the grade chart as we progress during the postseason.
I think that I'm going to be the bad professor.
Uh-oh.
And I think I'm just going to go with C. And I just think there was too much disinterest, too much, we can get there just on our talent. I mean, they finished 4th by a point in our tiebreaker or something like that to the LA Kings. But if we went back through the season, we could probably point to 7, 8, 10 games where they just didn't give a fuck. I mean,
Mailed it in.
How do you give up 6 goals to fucking Arizona in the 3rd period? Right? That one win puts them in 3rd. And even to a point last night, and I know the last game of the year, you're trying to not get hurt and stuff like that, but they gave away too many points, not disrespecting the game, but sort of just not having enough respect for themselves. They're like, fuck this. We're down a goal. We're down 2 goals. It's the middle of February. We're in Calgary. It's minus 87 degrees. Fuck it. Let's just go back to the hotel and call it a day. There are other games for us to win. And I mean, I don't ever want to be a diligent stat keeper where I, keep track of ridiculous stats that we talk about at the end of the season wrap up. But there was just far too much. Eh, I'm going to get a game check. We're going to go have a nice steak dinner. I love the nightlife in Florida. Um, and they didn't. If they were just more engaged, their grade would be a lot better. And they spent extended stretches of this season not engaged. Again, I don't blame Bruce Cassidy one bit. It's the pride of those 20 guys in the locker room, which a few times you have to almost call in question. They didn't play for the crest. They talk about that a lot. You play for the crest on the front, not the name on the back. They didn't play Golden Knights hockey for extended periods of time during the season. And as a result, they get what they get. They get Dallas, and if they get by Dallas, they get the winner of Colorado and Winnipeg. And if they get that, I mean, who knows what the hell's going to happen on the Pacific side. But I hope that the malaise and the lackadaisical disrespect for the game and for the crest, I shouldn't say I hope. I'm positive that it's gone now. That switch is flipped. Whatever the lineup looks like, it is what it is. The season was what it was. We're not going to recap the grades because it's too long and I can't read my handwriting, but you'll see them pop up throughout the episode, our little report cards. It was an okay season. That's pretty much it. But we're on to game 83. That will wrap up the report card. Thanks as always to the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com. Everything you need to know about Las Vegas. And by also presented by Dr. John Pierce, my very, very good friend at agelessforever.net, www.agelessforever.net. The report cards are closed and in the mail. We'll see you in a little bit.